Hello and welcome to this episode of the Clean Bill of Wealth podcast. I am your host, Galen Nuttall, and as always, this is the spot where I interview people who are out to enhance the lives of physicians, especially in Canada. This is where I talk to people about such topics such as health, wealth, relationships, well-being, side hustles, practice management, and much more. Now, there are a few big changes that I want to make sure you are aware of. So first off, as always, you can head on over to galenhelpsdocs.com. That's Galen helpsdocs.com to sign up for the Financial Literacy Challenge I've created, a series of videos and a worksheet where I tackle big questions I get around finances, like how to make the most of the medicine professional corporation, what are the different types of insurance and investments I should be looking at in Canada, and then pitfalls I see around retirement planning in Canada. So head on over for that. And once you do sign up for that, you'll be on my mailing list and you'll be the first to know when I have a new episode out or when I have a new whiteboard video out where I'm making complex financial concepts simple. Now, big news, if you do head on over the site, you're going to see that there's a new button there where you can book a free, no strings attached consult with me. That's for anyone who's saying, look, Galen, I love the idea of your videos. I love the idea of the workbook. I'm not sure I'm going to find time for all that. I just have one big burning question I'd love answered, or I want some of your time to answer these questions. Head on over there. If you want to get in touch with me, if you want to spend some time and ask me a question, be sure to head on over there and book a spot. Last big announcement, huge one. I have started recording masterclass sessions with my guests. So we are covering amazing topics such as how to start a side business quickly, important concepts around money, mindset, and much more. And those videos are only available when you sign up for the challenge. There's a section in there in the membership site was the masterclass series. So when you get to the end of an episode and you hear me talking about the masterclass session that I'm about to film with the guest, that's where you're going to find it. So thanks so much for tuning in for these updates, and on with the show. All right, everyone, welcome to this episode of a Clean Bill of Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Galen Nuttall, as always, and today I'm joined by Dr. Sam Gharbi. Sam is the co-founder of Arya Health, and we've had some amazing conversations leading up to this interview. What I really get from you is that you're very passionate about making things easier for doctors, and it sounds like that's really what you've done and what you've put together over the last bit. So first off, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, Galen.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad we made this happen. And so why don't we just kick off, like anything about your background that you want people to know for sure, like as we kick this off, just to kind of, just so people know, if anyone's, any listeners, you're out in Vancouver. Yeah. I'm out in Eastern Ontario, but it doesn't matter thanks to the power of Zoom. So we can have this interview. But yeah, what do you want people to know about you before we kick it off?
I'll try to keep it pretty brief. I mean, I grew up in Montreal. I never thought I'd become a doctor. Far from thought I'd start a tech company and become an entrepreneur. So it's amazing where life takes you. If you had told me at 15 or 20 years old, this is where I'd end up, I would have never believed I'd be on the West Coast, being a doctor and doing some really, really cool stuff with tech with some of my best friends. But essentially, yeah, so I grew up in Montreal, went to med school at McGill, moved out west to California and trained there for some time, came up to BC, was blown away by how beautiful it is here. And I was like, no, I'll just stay here for a couple of years, we'll see how it goes. And then 12 years later, I'm still here practicing as I'm an internal medicine physician here in Vancouver. And, after I did my training, like a lot of folks, you're pretty beaten down after, 100-hour weeks and long hours living in the hospital. And I ended up actually taking a break and doing a master's in health informatics. So I kind of racked my brain being like, what's bothering the most about healthcare? What's leading to this, these frustrations? And it was, well, to make it better, but it just seems like not much is changing, 12 years of training throughout it seemed pretty stagnant, and seeing everything around you with technology evolving the way it was and, completely transforming industries. I was like, well, maybe I can go learn about this a little bit and come back and contribute in my own way. And that's what led to a lot of the different work I've done in terms of, eventually leading to Arya Health that I founded with Rich Stramko and Rich Vandegreen, who were also two physician colleagues and great buddies of mine. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, awesome. No, I love what you're saying about how you never would have pictured yourself being here. And it seems like you really plotted your course kind of according to what you're interested in, like from straight up medicine to the master's and then kind of back to it and kind of meandered around the West Coast a bit, like from starting off in Montreal and then went over out West. So talking about technology and medicine. So first, So, I mean, I am going to ask you a bit about like what I find. Well, I find it pretty funny. Like, so I'll call a doctor's office. Like, I do like online webinars, like to talk about financial planning for doctors, and I'll call up offices to invite them. And commonly, I'd say 8 times out of 10, the receptionist will say, "Can you fax us more information?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll have to open up a website that I can send a fax through because I don't have a fax machine or a landline." So that always cracks me up a bit. We're like, "Yeah, fax is the best way. That way I can print it out and I can put it on their inbox, da da da." And I'm like, "Oh, this is funny." But before so tech and medicine. Can you walk us through what Arya Health is all about? Like, what is it? What does it do? Like what are you up to with that company for doctors?
Well, it's a great question. And it's a great point you bring up because even back in 2006, when I started my internship, they said, "Hey, you need to go buy a pager." They didn't even give us pages over at McGill. So I remember going to the local telecommunications company and saying, "Hey, listen, I'd like to buy a pager." And in 2006, the guy looked at me like I was insane. He's like, "Sir, can we interest you in something called a cell phone?" And I was like, "No, you don't understand." And back then, we weren't allowed cell phones in the hospital because they believed that they may interrupt or disrupt the technology there or God knows what. Obviously, that wasn't the case. But at the time, we weren't even allowed to use them. Even now, still, we can't use texting when it comes to talking about patients. We can't use email. There's all kinds of privacy and security regulations. But it's amazing how far behind we are. But somehow fax and pagers are safer for patient care. Despite the fact that you don't know if the person got your fax, who has a fax machine. What if, have you ever seen a fax come through? It's not very legible half the time, right? It's brutal. And then you have people scanning that and then putting into, an electronic system from which they're providing care. So it's nuts. Sometimes I wonder, and I always joke around about this, us as doctors are the dumbest smart people you'll ever meet. I've never met a group of people who are this brilliant and intelligent, and yet we do such stupid things when it comes to how we provide care. And, for whatever reason, I think that it just bothered me going through medical training and being like, why is everything so painful logistically? Why is everything so antiquated? Why do we keep reinforcing things that just don't make sense and actually cause harm? We spend so much time looking at how, procedures or pharmaceuticals cause harm or benefit in patients. But we do so little studies relative to it in terms of logistics of care. Patients coming and waiting for hours in the emergency room, how they're triaged, how that data is used, how within the outpatient settings in this country, especially waiting months and months and months to see specialists. And even the way that you're sent to specialists from a GP, going through their Rolodex, not really knowing what the wait times are, faxing something off, hoping to God that person gets it. And then 6 months later, folks say, "Hey, I never even got that referral in the first place," or "I never got that call back from the hospital for that test." So it really is broken. And it's not just in Canada. It's, I spent a lot of time when I was doing my training being like, well, maybe other people are doing it better. So I spent the summer in France and, I'd heard great things about the French system and I'm bilingual growing up in Montreal. So I worked there and I was like, no, this is, also equally broken in different ways. It's good in some ways for sure, but there's also other things that are, shortcomings that are leading to harm. I spent some time in the States. I worked, and trained across California, and same issues where certain things were done better, other things were done worse. But, the overarching theme was, man, we're not even looking at a lot of these problems and addressing them where we could really make a huge difference in care and outcomes. And that's where Arya Health came from. It came from essentially me sitting down and saying, you know what, if I'm an old man on my deathbed looking back, I'm going to regret this so much if I don't do this. It's going to kill me inside if I don't try to do something about it. And ultimately I said, you know what, this is scary and this is difficult. And what do I know about starting a tech company? But, I may as well try it out, and it's okay to fail. It's not okay not to try, or at least in my mind, that was really, my decision-making process. And so I went and I called up one of my best buddies, Dr. Rich Stramko, who was a geriatrician. We trained together. And I said, hey, Rich, I have this idea. I want to create a tech company and, start an electronic health record. And he's like, are you crazy? What do we know about this? And I was like, I'm like, what do these other guys know about it? Look at the existing vendors, and nobody's really built anything that makes sense. And the analogy I use is, you got a flip phone versus a smartphone. That jump, it's still a phone, but it's a huge difference in terms of functionality and flow and logistics and ease of use, texting on an old phone versus on a smartphone and all kinds of other things that you can do. So that kind of led to the creation of Arya Health. Later on, we got one of our good buddies, Rich Vandegreen, who we trained with. He's a cardiologist. And, the three of us just started putting together some ideas, started hiring some developers, started leveraging contacts to build out this company. And we built out, the backbone of what we saw as from which we can grow in terms of fixing a lot of our issues was the basic database of healthcare. How are we accumulating information? How are we using that information and sharing that information to provide better care in a way that's smooth logistically, that isn't death by a thousand cuts, which kind of is the case when you're using, paper charts, pardon the pun, or even existing vendors where, it's so many pop-ups, so many buttons, so many clicks. First time I ever used one as a staff, I was like, I couldn't figure out how to make a prescription. And I was like, I went to university for 12 years. I'm not a dumb guy, not that smart of a guy. I'm not a dumb guy. How come I can't intuitively figure out how to make a prescription? I spent the whole day doing prescriptions on a pad while I was using this EMR. And I've seen time and time again, doctors have incredible issues using technology where these people are smart enough to be able to figure it out. If my parents, who know nothing about computers, figured out how to sign up for Facebook or an email, it's kind of nuts. So that's at the core of Arya, where it's a group of doctors who saw a problem and said, let's fix it and let's make our lives better.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying. So death by a thousand paper cuts. And yeah, the whole pager thing, that's amazing. I remember I did an internship at Bellevue Hospital because I was pre-med for a while. And it was pretty early on with cell phones. I mean, it was like 99, 2000 or something like that. And I remember a patient pulling out a cell phone in the ER and people just went nuts. They're like, you got to put that away. It's going to mess with all our machines and everything. And she's like, I'm not even making a phone call. And she's like, no, you can't even have it on. Like, you have to turn it off. Like, it's going to ruin everything. So yeah. So, I mean, it looks like, you saw, and you saw that it wasn't intuitive. Like, it's, like it was not easy to do. And I mean, tech is easy when it's intuitive, right? Like, I mean, there's this, people say like, oh, my kids understand technology so well. It's like, well, because so much of what we use is very intuitive now. Like, take them back to the 80s when all we had was like DOS prompt on like a screen and they wouldn't know what to do, but hand them a very intuitive tablet where you just tap and swipe and whatnot. So it sounds like you really saw that. And just like, even though you didn't necessarily, I like how your buddy is like, yeah, what do we know about this? And you're like, oh, what do any of these people know about this? Like, this stuff isn't all that great. So, I mean, it just sounds like you're really out to make it more efficient. So, I mean, really for people that are using your systems, I mean, what is it like to, like you're saying, it's from flip phone to smartphone. Like what is it? I mean, I assume they're saving time or it's more efficient or like, and I mean, I love the idea that to trickle down to the patient care. Like you said, the community is happy to look at efficiencies or inefficiencies in diagnoses and things like that, but not necessarily in the bigger picture of like how we're managing records, how we're managing patient transfers, like you said, the Rolodex of specialists, and not even knowing how many months it might be. So yeah, so you could walk us through what it looks like for someone to sort of like transition from whatever they're using over to Arya Health.
Yeah. And, I'm incredibly biased when I say this, but it's a breath of fresh air. It's such a godsend to be able to use, because I use it myself. All the founders, the three of us use it, and our colleagues use it. And that's how it grew. It grew fairly organically. We've, spent $0 on sales and marketing so far. It's just been word of mouth of doctors telling doctors, hey, this is so much easier to use. Cool. And, than anything else out there. So, it kind of speaks for itself in terms of that, how it's grown from there. And I think that, ultimately, it's not, a lot of time when you look at how people are approaching technology, especially right now, there's buzzwords and people look for things that are sexy. They talk about AI, they talk about analytics, big data analytics. People invest in those things like, oh my God, yes, of course, there's this gold rush to those things. But, in healthcare anyways, we're so behind. I think we're decades behind so many other industries that we really have to start at the core of things and say, hey, listen, let's start with the basics that aren't that sexy. How do you open up a chart, enter in information in an easy way, but in a way that makes sense, where the data in there is, valid, and that can later on be used for analytics. But right off the bat, if, what you're seeing in medicine is a lot of doctors are going into the system and not even tagging any kind of diagnoses, because they say, these SNOMED codes are difficult to use. These ICD codes are incomplete. Forget it. Or, oh, I got to do, 7 clicks to do this. This is nonsense. Or, you know what? This diagnosis is good enough. It matches close enough to what I want to put into the system. And these are things that I've seen firsthand, because before I even started Arya, I was the Associate Chief Medical Information Officer for Vancouver Coastal Health. And we had this big Cerner project, which is the Coke or the Pepsi of electronic health records in the US. And within the hospital systems anyways, that started to expand, worldwide. And so, they were like, hey, Sam, you know about this stuff, help us out. Let's go from paper to electronic. And the amount of times I saw my colleagues just going through these kinds of hardships and saying, I hate this is so difficult, and not even entering information correctly or doing shortcuts or, cutting corners that, again, compromised the validity of the information, which can then compromise care. And ultimately, if at such an early level you have those kinds of problems, then forget all those sexy big data analytics, predictive analytics and other things that are amazing. But you got to start with the backbone, which is the database, and how you enter in a note, how do you enter in patient information. And then from there, that's where we started with Arya. But from there, we've built around it things like telehealth, things like patient portals, things like, patient reminders, things like patient self-booking online, things like billing and integrated eFax. So we call it eFax, but it just looks like email. It's built into the system. And, God forbid we'd use email.
Right.
But,
call it eFax and they'll be okay with it. The ePager.
The ePager. And it's, we obviously abide by privacy and security guidelines around that. But we're like, wait a second, how come you should be walking to physical fax or logging into a website for eFaxing when you can just build something that's integrated in the system that looks exactly like email? And you can just, like an Amazon shopping cart, be like, here's my note, here's the results, here's the referral, tag, send, rock and roll. And we've actually timed it and said, listen, let's take other competitors. It takes, 3 minutes on average to create a prescription on these vendors, or 5 minutes or 7 minutes. It takes 30 seconds on Arya.
Wow.
It takes, 10 minutes from the time the doctor creates something to be faxed to the time it is faxed, by your MOA, medical office assistant. For us, it takes less than a minute. These are things that you don't really notice in your practice logistically. They're not sexy. People aren't talking about them. They're not buzzwords, but it makes a huge difference when you're actually running an outpatient practice or clinic.
Yeah, no, I find that very interesting. I mean, it's those small things like, it's something that you might do multiple times a day. And really what I was hearing was around the, like doctors are kind of settling, like, I can't find that exact code, so I'm just going to settle for this code, or it's too hard to find that, so I'm just going to settle for this. And just like you said, like that's early on in the engagement. If you're already starting to have this divide between what's actually happening and what you're logging, it sounds like that could just potentially continue to keep going down the line of like, it's not the exact thing that happened, but it's good enough because it's too hard to figure it out. Exactly. And it's kind of funny. So two things. One is that I was definitely at the digital forefront. Like, well, I'd say right now, even now, like during the pandemic, a lot more advisors have figured out how to use video conferencing. Like, but I was doing Skype meetings back in 2013, and my colleagues were like, "You can't do virtual meetings. Like, that's not possible in our industry. It's like coffee and a handshake, And like, so now I'm licensed in BC, Manitoba, Alberta, Nova Scotia, and Ontario, and I have clients in all those provinces, many of whom I've never met in person ever. And they're like, they could care less, obviously, if we meet in person. So, but yeah, a very similar situation. I joined the company in 2013 and they're like, here's how you use the fax machine. And I'm like, I've never touched a fax machine in my life. Like, you're going to have to, and it's like, you have to stand here and wait for the confirmation. And I was like, what is this thing? Like, this is crazy. The other thing I was going to say is I interviewed Dr. Sarah Smith, who's a charting coach out of Alberta. And it's really cool. Like, it sounds like it would be the best. Like, I mean, she talks a lot about efficiency of usage of time, not on the technical side, but on the personal side. Like, every time we get distracted from a task, it takes us that much longer to get back to it, all those things. And what you're looking at, which I find really cool, is the actual, the system, the heart, the system we're using, how is it inefficient, how to make it more efficient. So, I mean, it sounds like, if you can turn a 3-minute task to a 30-second task and you do that 20 times a day, that's a lot of time.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. And I mean, we've seen, we went live with the heart function clinic and the cardiology group at one of the major hospitals here in Vancouver, and it was game changing for them. They were able to take, I believe, 2 full-time equivalent administrative staff and redirect them to other more meaningful tasks that involve patients instead of all the busy work they were doing with Arya. That's game changing when you look at how much time you're saving. And most clinics don't even realize that they have 2 or 3 medical office assistants per practitioner who are just shredding things, faxing things, uploading things, calls and reminders and everything else. There's a lot of this stuff that you can automate, but the doctors don't usually sit down with their office managers or office assistants to go through those pain points. And, the people responsible for that often don't have the power or the insight necessarily to change those kinds of things. There's a lot of complexities around it. So, instead of leaving that for medical centers or clinics, it's responsibility in some ways of, the technology itself to say, well, we understand what the problem is. Let's automate these things. Let's fix it. Let's bring down your overhead, redirect people to do more meaningful tasks with patients. It's huge.
Yeah, so it sounds like it could really have a positive impact in patient care because it's just so streamlined. And would you say that some doctors are able to then see more patients, like increase the volume of patients they see?
Again, we've looked at most specialty practices and they've increased their number by 30%. So they're seeing 30% more patients in the same day. So their wait times are going down significantly. And again, this is the heart function clinic at the Royal Columbian Hospital. Again, we've seen data where there's a 30% increase in the amount of patients you're seeing per day. Billings go up as well. Wait times go down for patients. It's a no-brainer. It's giant in terms of the efficiencies. We've also seen similar numbers in general practitioners across the board. So it's pretty game-changing when you really look at it that way.
Wow. So do doctors like seeing 30% more patients?
Well, that's the thing. We're actually, some of our colleagues on it actually just do 30% less work.
There you go. Well, I just know, I definitely, especially when I think of like family physicians, that's, I was talking to a client today who's a physician who was doing a locum as a family physician. And they were talking about like how burdensome it can be to keep all the notes going. And like, especially family physician, and right now, especially like people are kind of backlogged all these health issues. And it's like, all right, I haven't seen a doctor in a year and a half. Let me come in with like the 20 things I've got going wrong. And she was like, it's kind of brutal, like tracking all this stuff with my system. And so, yeah, obviously, like someone could make the choice of, I'm going to see 30% more people. And in all likelihood, my income is going to go up quite a bit. Or I can see less people and just like have more time. So it sounds like a win-win. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool. No, I love it. And then, I'd love to know, one thing I want to hear about is just like you talked a bit about, you saw this inefficiency inside of medicine outside of the scope of what you actually do, so to speak, like as a physician, but you saw how it was impacting you. So what was it like to kind of take that plunge to create something outside? And like, you're not the first ones to do it, right? Like obviously other people are doing it, but you're like, we're going to create this thing in this sort of parallel industry, but different industry. Like what was that journey like of getting that off the ground?
Yeah, it's never easy, but you learn a lot, and it's incredibly rewarding. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I would say, getting into medicine and going through medical training was incredibly challenging, and I would say, doing this, being an entrepreneur, building a tech company, learning how to effectively manage folks, hire folks, motivate folks, build technology, effectively communicate ideas. All these things are not necessarily the skill set that doctors necessarily have or are taught. And at the same time, we understand our industry better than most other people. So, I think it's a responsibility to get engaged in that. But it was very challenging, very difficult. You grow as a person, you learn a lot about yourself and the folks you work with. And I think that, ultimately it really came down to nobody else was really doing a good enough job of addressing these problems. And ultimately we said, you know what, well, why not us? Let's try. And it's been a journey of like up and down, up and down. And there are times where you're like, oh man, this is, we're close to failure, or there's this, this problem, that problem. How do we even figure this out? And I would encourage anybody who has an idea not to be intimidated by the difficulty of getting it up and running. It's amazing how things just fall into place sometimes if you work really hard and with a little bit of luck. How do you find programmers? How do you find different folks? And what kind of people do you need within the company to do what you need to do? But again, luckily I had my two co-founders to lean on. That's always huge, to be able to, lean on other folks when you're feeling a little bit, you're like, okay, what do I do with this? What do I do with that? What do you think? And especially two guys who are, great guys, two of my best friends, two of the smartest people I know. And to be able to grow this team where honestly, it's a great group of friends. That's kind of become it with Arya. So I mean, that's kind of been the process of getting there, in a nutshell.
Very cool. And I mean, definitely it's interesting to hear, like, having gone through, but going through getting into med school, going through all that, and then like comparing it to entrepreneurship of like, it's, you're saying like, it's kind of up there on the difficulty scale of like, and it's like, it's kind of comforting to hear. Cause I mean, I'm an entrepreneur at the end of the day, my wife's an entrepreneur, and it is difficult for sure. And I love what you had to say about like, a lot of things you didn't know how to do, like, maybe find, manage people, but it sounds like you built like a team around friends and that common goal, like you said earlier, around, on your deathbed, you wanted to look back and be like, I did this because I knew it had to be done. And it sounds like you had sort of like that North Star guiding you of like, we got to get this done. We got it, like that impact at the end of the day that kind of keeps you going, even when it looks like you might fail or when something's broken or you don't know how to fix something. So no, that's cool. And yeah, I'm a big fan of people. Like I interviewed my dad, who's a doctor, for my podcast. And he said that one of the things he struggled with is he didn't feel like he had a lot of creativity in his practice. He's a nephrologist. And he's like, yeah, sometimes diagnoses, I had to kind of, be creative in some ways, but he's like, he felt like he didn't have a lot of true creative outlet, or the stakes were too high. He's like, the stakes are very high as a doctor, like life and death. Whereas if you're working on a side project, it may not be a life or death situation, but you're like pursuing that passion. So yeah, I'm a big fan of people if they have got that idea, to like put it out there, pursue it as a side project. I know that time is obviously not in abundance necessarily for a lot of physicians, but figuring that out and going with it definitely can be rewarding.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And I mean, you have to be a bit of a sadist too, because clearly working a full-time job as a doctor and running a company is a bit insane. So certain type of person, I guess, who goes into it. But you're right about the creativity point, is that, there are some of us, not everybody in medicine, when you go into sciences, creativity may not necessarily be the highest thing on your priority list of how you're hardwired, because there isn't that much creativity in medicine, depending on what kind of medicine you do. But there are those of us who, you need that outlet. I mean, as you can see in the background, I see it in yours too. You're playing guitar. I've been playing music forever. I love to read books. I love to, paint and draw and that kind of stuff. And that creative outlet is so important. And I think that we always talk about the art of medicine as well. A lot of what we do, we may not realize that there's a lot of subjectivity and nuance. And, there is a certain outlet for that. But ultimately, it's tough because for a lot of us, it's very algorithmic in terms of how you follow these pathways to diagnoses and treatment. So there isn't that much wiggle room in this day and age. But it's nice to have that outlet too with Arya, particularly where I can look at an issue and it's kind of like a blank canvas where I can say, that was a pain point for me today in clinic. And then I can go back to the team and say, what do you guys think about this? What do our users think about it? We encourage everyone on Arya to give us feedback. We accumulate it, we score it, and then we say, what can we keep building? What can we keep introducing? Because, you keep wanting to make things better. You can't stay static. There's a million and one things that you can do to improve these systems. And I mean, that's always been also one of our frustrations with existing systems, where they get to a corporate level where they're making money and they're comfortable with that. And it's not easy to keep building. But, for us, we say, listen, let's look at our pain points. Let's look at our users' pain points. Let's keep making things better. And it's an amazing creative process that way.
Yeah, no, I love how you've got like that. You've got such interesting insight into using it, and then like looking how it's working or not working, coming back to the drawing board like that same day and like putting it back into practice. And it's like, I don't know if they had this commercial up here, but it was like, I'm not only the president, I'm also a client. Like there was an old commercial where a guy said that. And so like you're practicing what you preach, but then also having this amazing feedback loop of like very quickly be like, hey, I didn't like how this thing worked today. Let's come back and look at how we can fix it and make it better. So
it's like the old hair club for men, right?
Yeah, the hair club. I'm not only the president, I'm also a client. Yeah, those ads have started popping up in my Facebook feed. I'm trying not to take it too personally, but
hey, you and me both, man. We're getting old, so
it happens.
hairline isn't what it used to be, but yeah.
No, that's very cool. No, and I mean, really, I think it's awesome that you've, really taken that desire to keep, positively impacting your colleagues. And like, I mean, there's one thing like really that I love. And so in my work, like I really know I've done my job when a doctor says like, I sleep better at night. So this is the financial side of things. Like I sleep better at night knowing that I'm going to be okay, or I'm not as stressed because I know that I'm going to be okay. Like those are like those big signs of like, I'm doing the right thing. Like the day-to-day like technical stuff, that's how I get to that point. So it's when I hear that it's awesome. And what I'm hearing in your world is, doctors saving time, like doctors like practicing more medicine and like not getting bogged down in that minutia, and like their staff being freed up to do more meaningful tasks and not like the dedicated shredder in the corner, like who's scanning faxes and shredding the faxes, which is wild. So no, that's really amazing, man. Like that's awesome.
I appreciate it. I mean, it's funny because when we first started building this, I have an outpatient practice, and I started just shadowing different folks who worked at the clinic. And I remember one day with one of our lead MOA's office assistants, I spent maybe an hour with her. And after an hour, I was like, Jesus, this is what you do every day. She's like, yeah. I'm like, how have you not quit this job? I'm like, you're an angel for doing this so patiently and that like so difficult doing some of the tasks that you see. But folks don't complain. They don't bring it up. You don't know about it as a doctor necessarily. And I think, it's nice to be able to fix a lot of those things and help along the way. There's still a lot of work to do. I mean, that's what's exciting too with Arya, where, it's only been a couple of years. We're a new company. Obviously time and money are always the two things that limit most things. Yep. And it's really exciting to be able to keep growing, keep building, keep addressing these issues, listen to the folks who are our colleagues and what their needs are. It's been a fun ride.
Amazing. No, very amazing. And so we've made the folks wait long enough. How can they find out more about Arya Health? How do people get in there and take a look at it?
You can look us up on our website, aryaehr.com. And then what I'll do is I'll add a couple links to this. So in terms of a demo, so you can take a look at it. Don't take my word for it. Try it out. You can reach out to us as well at info@aryaehr.com if you have questions. You can also do that through the website. So I'll throw up some material that we can link to this. And, anybody have any questions, come to me. Love to talk to you. Co-founders as well. We're super open about this kind of stuff. We'd love to hear from you. Love to give you a demo. Love to show you what we're doing. And make your life a lot easier and simpler and more effective and efficient.
That's amazing. So for everyone, check it out, aryaehr.com. So that's aryaehr.com to check it out. And then wherever you're watching this or listening to this, I'll be sure to put some links down so people can do a test drive, do a demo. And also, you've graciously agreed to do a masterclass episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause the podcast, then we're going to do a video. And so what are we going to do? You're going to share screens, like go into the hood a bit, take me on a demo of the software.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome. So we're gonna record that, and the only way you get access to that by joining my financial literacy challenge at GalenHelpsDocs.com as always, and you'll be able to get that video and look under the hood of this amazing program. And I can't wait to see it. Like I'm coming in completely, like I have some, I've used software to try to, like organize things in my world, and most of it's kind of clunky. So I'm excited to see what you've got going on, coming in as someone who's completely unaware of how things normally look. So it'll be really interesting. So yeah, man, thank you so much for joining me.
No, thanks, Galen, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Very cool. Take care, man.
Hey, you too. Cheers.
Hey there, thanks so much for having joined me on this episode of the Clean Bill of Wealth. I really appreciate you taking your time and having listened to this episode, whether you're multitasking, driving, walking the dog, or jogging. Really, really appreciate it. As always, feel free to head on over to GalenHelpsDocs.com to sign up for the Financial Literacy Challenge and be added to the email list so you'll be the first to know when there's a new episode out or when I've added a new whiteboard video to the series. Also there, you'll see a button if you want to just book some time with me. If you have a big question around finances, you're not sure you're going to find the time to go through the videos and the challenge and the workbook, feel free to book a no strings attached call with me. And the last big thing is if you do sign up for the challenge, you will also get access to the masterclass videos that I've started filming with my guests around things like money mindset and how to start a side business quickly and many more to come. So be sure to head on over to GalenHelpsDocs.com if you want to check that out, and I will see you on the next episode. Have a great day.